Greetings, good people, my controllers out there. Welcome to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we all know that the best leaders, well, they just never stop learning. And today's guest is a walking masterclass in betting on yourself. Kelsey Nicole Nelson, aka KNN, is an award winning sports journalist, professor, media founder, and full on table builder. Okay, she built her own tables. From launching pipelines for Black women in sports media to creating legacy access through books breaking borders. Did you hear that? She's not waiting on permission. She's building legacy purpose first and putting on for the DMV. Like I be putting on for the Bay. Okay. Every step of the way, she is always repping the DMV. Let's get together and have a chat with Miss KNN. How you doing?
Hi, I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I truly do appreciate it.
Super excited to have you here. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a while, but you know what? I think timing is everything. And knowing that you are on your way to California
Yes.
to experience all that we have to offer for now, because in the next couple of years, we have a few things coming up.
Y'all have everything. I'm gonna be on flights, not Fillings, but all for Cali, and I'm so excited.
Listen, I'm trying to have you out here as often as possible. I want to get right into, on top of being beautiful, listen, you say that you've lived a life of being humbled, of being humble, not being humbled. I want you to tell me, in a media industry that often tries to check Black women, how do you maintain confidence without shrinking to make others comfortable?
Ooh, Toya, I love this question, and I'll tell you, I have to give credit to my parents, first and foremost. That's where I always say, "Be humble, don't be humbled." I treat every single day like an audition. What you did yesterday was great, but today's a new day, and you can't believe your own headlines, and your own hype. And I think when you stay humble, you stay hungry, and we say hungry, you stay passionate for this industry. And so I think for me, yes, you have to walk into every room like you own it, like you belong there, because you do. I'm a woman of faith, and I don't believe that God makes any mistakes. So if you are somewhere, you were meant to be. But the other side of that is it's important to live as you climb. And I think that's where the humble part comes in, right? Because you're not only there for you, you're there for others. Unfortunately, we're still living in a world where we're still seeing the first happening for women that look much like me and you. And so I think when you remember your greater purpose and your why, and then for me, it's just remembering that I was that young girl that dreamed of doing this, and that now I'm doing it. And so I think when you remember that why, it just reminds you like, wow, like, yes, like, this was a dream. Now it's reality. But now I want to manifest it to continue to be a reality for me, right? So it's a movement and not just a moment. And I think, like I said, for me, just doing, I'm not just only doing it for me, but for other young Black rock star girls to come behind me and hopefully are next to me. It's for all of us. And so I think when you really have that community mind and spirit, and when you really do champion the community rather than just yourself, you'll realize that it's much greater, than you being there. And like I said, every day is an audition. Anything can be taken away from you at any time. And so again, I think that's why for me too, it's making sure that I'm not planning the season in just one room, but multiple rooms, to make sure that the legacy and impact continue. Because that's what I'm driven by, legacy and impact, because I won't be here forever. So what can I do each and every day to make sure the KNN legacy is told, continues, and hopefully honestly inspires? So thanks to my mom and dad, for always embedding that in me, and that mind and spirit, lives with me every single day.
Mama, daddy, mama, daddy.
Gotta give props when props are due. That humble, mentality, that Black Southern spirit that was put into me, and just that hard work ethic, honestly, as well, that came from mom and dad. Because you want something, work for it, and do it well and with a smile.
I love that. Listen, with KNN, it was born because you didn't see opportunity. So you created it.
Right.
From a comms perspective, when do you stop pitching the gatekeepers and start becoming the gate?
Ooh, now this is a deep question. I think when it starts, right, everything has to start with building a brand. And luckily for me, it started with my name, luckily. And my parents, obviously, I don't think they planned for it, but like from a young age, everyone was calling me KNN. Like you were your own news network. Here comes KNN. Here she goes. She's going to tell all the news. She's got everything. They called me the Oprah of sports. And that kind of stuck with me. And so obviously you grow, you get older, you meet people. And I think for me, it began with my path started conventional, right? I went to journalism school, like most journalists, went to University of Maryland, go Terps. And then I think for me, I think I kind of had that real life experience though when I was in school. I was getting all these internships. I had the academic scholarship, but when I started applying to jobs, talk about the humbleness coming in, that's when I started really seeing those no's. And that's when I started really realizing, oh, I'm doing all this great stuff here in the DMV area, but it's not enough. And so, okay, I was like, well, how do I go back to the table, right? And make sure that I get that experience because every job wants you to have that experience. But I think that's kind of when it began to set in that I don't have to just wait for people. Let me go out and start doing this, on my own when the microphone wasn't being given. And so that's when I started creating my own content. And, like I said, little did I know that would launch later into launching my own podcast network and really, again, really growing my brand and getting jobs and opportunities that way. And I think, when you stop asking for a seat at the table, that's when you realize you're going to do, again, whatever it takes to make your dream comes true with your honor and your integrity. But knowing that no one's going to twist it around. You know what God's path was meant for you. And so, like I said, when people weren't giving me an opportunity in front of the microphone saying, it wasn't meant to be, that's when I had to go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, well, how do I create this? Because I know this is what God wants me to do. And so lo and behold, it honestly just happened. But I'll tell you, I had great people around me. I had great encouragement around me as well. And then great supporters, right? My first ever podcast listeners were my family and friends, right? They were the ones that were sharing it and, making sure that people knew what was happening, with me in the DC area. And so I'm so grateful for that, referral pipeline, that always word of mouth will never get old and it will always be there. But I think the second part again is just when you just can't settle. I always say my biggest fear in life is to get complacent. I've never been complacent in life. You can't be complacent. You always have to want and know you deserve more.
And you're in the right place, leaders and learners. I keep telling people, no matter how smart you get, we have doctors, professors, people that have been in their industry for the longest time that are still trying to get better, that are still trying to learn more. They don't stop reading. They don't stop researching. They don't stop trying to improve. There is never a time where you should be fine just being fine.
Right. Right. So you can't, because when you are, I always say, like, I always tell people, like, when I get out of media, it's going to be when I start getting the opportunities, when the passion is no longer there. And right now the opportunity is there and the passion is there. And that means I need to keep growing and building. And like I said, it's not just for me, it's for my interns, it's for my fellows, it's for my mentees, it's for those people that I don't even know who are watching me. Right. But they see something and they realize that they can do it too. So that's going to be continuing to motivate and fuel me.
Yeah, speaking of your media network, you taught at the college level and you run multiple businesses. What is I want you to tell me the biggest lie women are told about focus, and how has refusing that lie worked in your favor? Because
Yes. Okay, so I will tell you, last year my word of the year was intentionality. This year it is focus. And intentionally it's focus. And really, honestly, it's a combination of the two, intentionally focusing my energy and my efforts. I think, a lot of times, and this goes back to career day in school when you had a guest speaker come in and people ask what you want it to be. And I think often our brains are taught that it has to be one word, right? Teacher, lawyer, doctor, journalist. As I've gotten older and I realized in school, people would start to turn away after they asked me what I want to be. And I'd be like, excuse me, there's more. You have to come back. And that's kind of when you start having the breaths and the ands and the commas are added, because I liked multiple things. And I think for me too, and I think especially now people are realizing in this crazy job economy that we're living in with all that's happening in the world, having multiple skills and being multifaceted is a true treat. And so I think often people hear, you can't be a jack of all trades and master of none. I think you can be a jack of all trades and master of all, but it's important to realize it's not about the quantity, about the quality of your work. And luckily for me, even though I hold so many different titles, a lot of them do blend in, right? I'm a sports journalist, but also I teach sports media, right? So honestly, what I'm learning in the field hand in hand, I'm able to bring into the classroom. And then I've always been an innovator. Like I said, I launched my own podcast network. Well, I launched my own class at George Washington University, first ever sports writing class. But again, I've always kind of had that innovative spirit. I know it just didn't make sense to me that, we could be at this amazing institution in the nation's capital. We call it the sports capital. We sometimes call it the city of champions, though right now sports teams are kind of suffering a bit. But we needed the sports in the classroom, right? And I knew, again, I wanted to make sure that we were breeding that pipeline in a city like DC where so many decisions happen. And so I think, again, you have to kind of have that mindset, that mentality. And like I said, the and part, I think that's what's been so fun, is that I think every time people try to put me in this box, there's something else that happens. There's something else I do. Like COVID happened for all of us. And I was in the house just brainstorming and thinking. And that's really when the entrepreneurship mindset set off. For like, I need to make my official LLCs. I need to launch into business, and launched into entrepreneurship officially in 2022. And kind of the rest is history. Now I have 2 businesses that have been growing, and luckily those businesses, I literally just finished onboarding my interns and fellows, with that businesses. So again, talk about the pipeline and spreading the wealth, and making sure that our young people can get that hands-on experience. And we're doing it in real time. And so I'm so grateful. But again, taking everything I've learned from working in journalism, I also worked in comms. Most people don't know that. I worked for nonprofits for over 10 years. And so taking that experience.
Well, probably because you look 10. I mean, like, come on.
Well, look, thank you. Because look, it's a lot. And look, I'm glad there's no bags on the rise, y'all. I had 2 8 a.m. classes virtually this week. And so I'm very, very glad, but all that to say, I always say, like, this is what I think it was meant to be. Like, I love the academia part. I love being in the classroom, again, because I think especially now journalism, fortunately, is under attack. So making sure that me and my students are having the real conversation in real time about what does it look like to be a sports journalist. And I'm intentionally using the word journalist because that's what they are. That's what they're learning, right? I know sometimes people think it's interchangeable. No, being a journalist is being trained in the classroom. It's taking your SPJ pledge of ethics, your code of ethics, and understanding what that means. And it's carrying that true objectivity, that earning trust from your audience, and really taking that to the bank. And so that's what I want to make sure that we're differentiating. And like I said, I had all this experience. I'm able to put that there, but also they're teaching me, right? Because they're learning real time what it is to be a student journalist. They're breaking stories on campus. We're covering the athletics. And unfortunately, I think there has been, a shift away from some of the collegiate stories at the local level. And I bring all stories back to the local level because all news is local. Sports can always come back local and have that kind of angle effect. And I just love, again, being a steward of entrepreneurship, being a steward of learning, like you said, learning every day. And it's been fun. So also you have to enjoy the journey all the while when you're wearing these different hats. And so, like I said, I've been very grateful and thankful to be able to really build an empire. Like Oprah was always the inspiration, when I was younger, to seeing a Black woman from Mississippi who had, some roots here in Baltimore. So my family's from Mississippi. Obviously, I'm a Maryland girl, so the Baltimore thing hit home. But what she was able to build and dominate. And notice I said empire, right? I love working for others, but at the end of the day, I want to own something. I want something to be mine. I wanted the media conglomerate empire. And so just trying to make sure I'm planning.
That's something you also teach your students in your class. Do you talk?
Yes.
Okay.
We do a whole day about entrepreneurship because honestly, that's the world that they're going to be entering, right? We just had a guest speaker come in who had a Substack. We talked about that. What does that look like to launch a Substack, right? And to create your own stream of income? Because look, we have news quizzes, folks. Like they watch the news, they see what's happening in media, right? I mean, and it's continuing to impact. And so I think that's one thing I am able to leverage, right? Like obviously you want to go in, you want to get the job, you do need that experience. But at the same time, if it doesn't happen, you're just going to sit on the couch and twiddle your thumbs until it does. No, you got to be a go-getter. You got to have that mentality, right? To start something. And we're building the basis and blocks here. And now, luckily, because of technology, it's a little bit easier, right? For them to be able to start and do that while they're still in school.
I love that. I love that. I want you to tell me about being the first woman to co-host the NABJ Sports Task Force Awards.
Yeah.
It was historic. And I want you to explain to me, what does first, you're doing a few firsts here, actually cost? I've done a few firsts myself, and the cost was steeper than I imagined. But I want you to tell me what being a first costs, and what did it teach you about visibility versus power?
Ooh, yeah. So I'm going to take folks back to the last NABJ Sports Task Force Sam Lacey Pioneer Awards. And if you don't know Sam Lacey, please Google immediately who this phenomenal sports journalist was. I think for me, to be, again, like you said, the first woman, and I think about a storied organization like NABJ, right? They just celebrated the 50th anniversary. And I think about all the great Black journalists that came before me to pave the way as trailblazers. It means something. And, just we were in Cleveland last year for our convention, and one of the people I had a chance to honor was Jane Kennedy. And any Black woman in sports, hopefully you know that name. If you don't, please immediately go to your nearest bookstore, go on Amazon and order her book that she just released last year. And so for me to be in a seat interviewing the first Black woman on the NFL Today, and I'll tell you, it became real to me because I want to ask people, since Jane Kennedy left that desk, when have you seen a Black woman hosting the NFL Today? And so again, you talk about being the first. She was the first. I have been the first. And so I think I thought about reading her book, and I interviewed her at a place that was so historic to me as well, a place that I saw as a Black institution of history and culture, interviewing her at the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture after I had a chance to award her at NABJ. So again, getting to touch her base with her twice in the same year time span was absolutely amazing. But it was incredible. And so I think for me, I had a chance to meet the first NABJ Sports Task Force woman chair. And obviously I'm an advocate for Black women in sports, for minorities in sports. And so I know what that means because again, I just know me being there, seeing is believing. And so for me, it's great to be the first, but at the same time, I don't want to just be the first, right? I want the next woman to be able to come on. And so I think for me now, it's making sure, one, that I get people in that room to see, I love hosting. Like I said, I honestly just fell into hosting. But what would it look like to be able to champion and host these pioneers of sport? What does that feel like? And then for me too, making sure that we're honoring, and NABJ does a great job, especially our Sports Task Force. And I have to shout out Sherrod Blakely, former NABJ Sports Task Force chair, who really helped to put me in that seat. Because I also think it's important as we talk about championing women to shout out and call out our male allies that are also just as important, in that space and in that role and in that seat and really in believing in us. But, I think for me, it means a lot. It means a lot because again, to have a second, to have a third, to have a fourth, someone has to start it, right? To have the candle burning, someone has to ignite the fire and light that match for it. And so I think that's what it is. I think I'm an ignition starter. But at the end of the day, I wanted to how do I keep the fire burning? And so that's where my mind always is. And so going back to your question, I think the visibility is an opening into the doorway, but the power is how you stay in the doorway. And so then it comes to how do you leverage it? And so I think for me, this is when I've used social media as a great tool to showcase all the different things, come inside and come learn about me. But the power is where my leadership positions are. And so I always tell people, I'm never going to join an organization to just sit there and be complacent. I would much rather be a participant than a spectator. I would much rather be a participant.
As an NABJ member, hello, thank you. You are a
NABJ family.
Yes, family. And before I go any further, Tony.
I love Tony. Hi, Tony. Shout out to Philly. The East Coast love is real.
And he's doing such incredible. I just love Tony.
He is. Tony's amazing. And he's another example. Me and Tony, Tony, I can't remember even when we first had a chance to meet, but we have he has been a champion of my work from day one. He's had me on the show. We've talked football, we've talked different sports, and again, just another male ally who understands, the power that he has and has shared it to uplift and amplify Black women voices in sports. And I truly do appreciate it.
I don't know. I'm starting to think Tony just likes sisters. Okay, well, we'll go with that. Thanks, Tony.
We appreciate you, Tony.
He has a great support. He's a good collaborator. You were talking about COVID not too long ago. And during COVID, I was one of the first beta testers for Twitter Spaces. So we were complaining about something, me and another PR professional. It was three of us, and we were complaining about the same thing. So during COVID, I said, why don't we use my beta test to start to have a conversation with other PR professionals? So we started PR Lunch Hour. It eventually became a podcast for a while, but it allowed for PR professionals, communications professionals to come into this space and really talk about a lot of the things that were going on. Nice. And one of the big conversations and an ongoing conversation we would always have is the companies that had started being very performative around the George Floyd uprising, right? So looking at COVID and when all that took place, and now looking at our group and the conversations we had, it was a little contentious, no, this is authentic. And many of us knew, we were this is going to be very performative. We'll
Yep.
see over
Just right
time if it
now.
continues to happen. And girl, I'm telling you, we can look at that list right now, and it might be
My
5
God.
companies that are still doing what they started back then. Ben
That's
and
so
Jerry's was one of them before they actually sold part of their company off, and now they're being muzzled. But for the
important.
most part, it was a space where communicators would get together and journalists started coming in. CNN came in
Yes.
just to ear hustle to see what PR professionals were talking about and comm
Right.
professionals. But one of my favorite people in that group was Molly McPherson, who
Yeah.
um, she is incredible with crisis comms. And then I
Yes.
find out, of all things, she's a professor. So now I'm like, I want to be in your class. I want to be in
Learning
you
from you.
my
Yes.
college hour. Now I want to go to your class. But seeing how, it's just something about professors and people that know how to pour into others with their knowledge and their power and their impact and
Yeah.
continue their legacy through other people. It is amazing to watch. I love watching that, and hearing the work that you are doing with your students is just incredible. And you're already talking about entrepreneurship and ownership. That was not a conversation when we were back in college. It was
Mm-mm.
not happening, ma'am. It was just
Yep.
not.
No one taught you that, right? But at the same time, like, one of my journalism professors, my former journalism professors at Maryland now has also launched, his own media business. We had never talked about it in class because that
Never.
wasn't the way of the world then, right? But that's the other thing. You always have to know how to pivot in this industry because things are always changing. So going back to being, a learner, because nowadays, like, yeah, like if you have a job in media full time, obviously I think you own that and you learn all that you can from that. But it's kind of like they teach you in business. What's the succession plan? How do you make sure that you're going to be good? And I think that's kind of when the ownership model has been such a beautiful thing, especially now that we've seen a shift with the audience. The audience has went from trusting, entities and organizations to now trusting in people and brands, right? And that's kind of why you saw the rise of the content creator, people trusting in people and brands. And even though I think, there's some conversation now on the impact of the content creator and that if that will be long standing, people still do trust who they know.
Yeah.
How do you get people to trust who they know? Again, by how you are, right? How do you build integrity? How do you build trust? And that's what I like, having to be able to have that in the classroom. That means something. And so I've done it on the sports writing realm. I previously taught radio and podcasting. So to be able to touch all those mediums as well in the classroom, I'm so grateful for, because they're all so important. And just knowing that, like, hopefully having a help on the next breed of journalists, sports
Yep.
journalists doing it right. I love that. I love that. And I will cherish that forever. And like I said, I'm learning from them just as much as they're learning from me.
And I love that for the recipients. I'm thrilled for them because, again, we didn't have that. You launched GWU's Intro to Sports Writing and Reporting course.
Mm-hmm.
From an educator's point of view, what skills are missing from young journalists entering the sports media pipeline today?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The first one that comes to mind is you have to be well-rounded in journalism. This means you do not only need to know what's happening in the sports world, you need to know what's happening in Minneapolis right now. You need to know why the players are being asked questions for the Minnesota Timberwolves about what's happening in Minneapolis right now. I can't tell you enough so nowadays, a lot of my students, right, they don't have TVs in their dorms anymore or in their apartments, right? A lot of us grew up, we had some type of TV or some type of news source that way. A lot of them now just have this right here. They have their phones and they're checking their phones. And I think that's the other thing. I think the thing that's missing too is, how do you accurately check news? So we do a whole day on fact checking. I make sure that all of my guest speakers have a way to talk about building reliable sources. I think unfortunately now it's really been emphasized to just get stuff out first, instead of right. So I think that's the other part that you have to really emphasize and you have to really hone in. You got to get it right. It's a lot easier to keep trust than to rebuild trust. It's just a true fact. And that's not even just in journalism. That's probably in any facet of your life. A lot easier to keep trust than to rebuild trust. And then again, going back, especially now, because think about it, they're looking at AI altered images. They're looking at so many parody accounts online. How do you trust and verify, right, that information that's going out there? But then again, how do you make sure you're a well-informed citizen? Like everything that's happening, that's why I love being in DC. That's what's kept me in DC. So many things happen in Washington, DC, and not all sports related. But I always say I can give you sports angle on anything happening, right? And sports touches everything, like literally everything. I think the other part too is a lot of my students do not watch local news, and that hurts my heart because I think everything has to tie back to the local angle, right? Like at the end of the day, everything has to happen back to that. So like just when it goes back to just being a student on any campus, you should know what's happening in your community newspaper, in your school newspaper. You should know what's happening in your city, right? That shouldn't be like a thing. And like I said, you have to just be well-rounded. So what's happening, even internationally, like all that type of stuff impacts us. We're talking about the Olympics coming up. In my class, we just talked about, the Olympics is coming up. Winter Olympics is coming up. We talked about what's happening at the Washington Post and them potentially eliminating their sports desk, right? And I know obviously there's been some updates to that. We talked how now 4 journalists will be going to the Winter Olympics after getting an email that none of them would go. But like, that's just, if this is happening at a storied legacy paper like the Washington Post right here in our backyard, where a lot of sports greats have come from, many great names that they've seen, who's to say this won't happen elsewhere? We saw what happened with the New York Times and their sports department, right? And a lot of times in life, one of my favorite quotes is, our past lies in our future lies in our past. We've seen this before. This might have been different entities, but we've seen this before. And so how do we prepare as journalists to be able to not only maybe be impacted by that news, but to cover that news? And so all of those different things. So all that to say, there's nothing like teaching sports journalism in Washington, D.C. You think about what's happening in D.C. right now. We have the RFK Stadium redevelopment happening, right, with the Commanders coming back to D.C. Mind you, by the way, we're about to have a mayoral election. So the mayor that started this process won't be the mayor that's finishing this process. We have a president who's talking about potentially having UFC on the White House grounds. I mean, when I tell you there's not enough for me to pull from, I mean, there's something every day that like literally I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to bring this in the classroom. And somehow like, how do I get this in the hour and 15 minutes I have them on Mondays and Wednesdays to talk about this, because there's so much. But I want them to, again, be well-shepherded stewards. And I have students that intern on the Hill, right, in the political aspect realm. A lot of them have jobs. I've had speech writers in my class. A lot of them touch the political realm. And so in my class, we know that sports are political. I mean, as much as people might say, they want to keep them separate, there's an aspect to sports that is political. And luckily, being in a city like DC, again, we see that example time and time again. I just sent them out, Tonya, to do interviews on the street about the NFL draft coming to DC next year. Half of the respondents didn't even know that was happening. And my students were in shock. They were like, wait, how are we talking to people like who don't even know, like, yes, the draft is in Pittsburgh this year, but DC, it's coming to next year, and that's very monumental for the city.
These young people are so unbothered. Some of them are just so unbothered. They're like, what? What's going on?
Yeah, they were like, oh, the draft is coming. Okay, well, that's good. I'm like, that's good. Like, this is the NFL draft coming.
For the ones that you do have that are bothered or that do have some level of involvement, emotion, and nuance going on inside their head, how do you teach them to deal with that and their ethical job as a journalist? How do you walk them through dealing with who they are, their personal brand, and the journalism that they need to produce?
Yeah, we start that day one, the objectivity and hopefully the non-bias, right? That needs to happen. So honestly, again, going back to real life examples, in our last class, we got to talk about everything happening with Bill Belichick right now. One of the headlines that's dominating news. Like I said, I can pull so many real life examples.
Are you going to talk about your girlfriend, or are you going to talk about not getting the Hall of Fame? Like,
look at that. And we looked at both sides. So one, let's look at it. Why would journalists not vote him into the Hall of Fame, right? And so I have students, luckily being at a school like GW, a lot of my students, I actually only have one from the area. So most of them are from other places. And I have a couple from the Boston, New England area, immediately hand shot up, right? Like, oh, Spygate and Deflategate. And they're like, oh, I don't know about that as a person. But then they thought about it, well, as a journalist, though, it was different. And they immediately acknowledge that, right? Having that hometown bias, which can exist, right? All of us are from a city or town, right? And obviously have some allegiances, but how do you put that aside? And even for me, I'm able to bring up my own, I'm a Heisman voter, right? So able to bring that up. And, the whole thing happened at the Heisman too. If people remember Diego Pavi, saying, hey, what about me? I think I should have won. So when I tell you the real life examples matter, but like I said, day one, and we're always talking about that. We have a conversation. That's really how I address it, right? Open conversation. How do we address it? You guys are covering, and then when I put them on beats, they're covering GW athletics. Hey, let me know if anybody has a conflict of interest. You guys are covering the basketball team right now. If you've ever been in a relationship with someone on the team, again, I don't know, need to know the specifics, but just tell me, is there anything that we need to do where I need to move you from a beat because you cannot be objective. You cannot do your job reporting, right? All I need to know is that. and we talk about that, right? And then, I had I had lunch with one, or, it's like, but we have that conversation to like, how does that happen? Because naturally you're going to develop when you're covering somebody, when you're building sources, right? Like, we're about to go to Super Bowl, you see the same people, right? You start to build a relationship with folks in that way. But at the end of the day, tell people you have a job to do. We're not here to be friends. I would hope you're not taking this class to make friends. This is not a socializing class. This is a class to learn the basics of journalism. And so honestly, the hardest thing for me, once I get them over the hump of talking to strangers, you'd be surprised. The hardest thing I have to do is get them I send them out and they're like, oh, we have to go talk to like people we don't know. Like, yes, that's journalism, right? Like, usually you're going to be talking to people that you don't know. And you don't have to be an extrovert. You can be an introvert and do this job, but you got to get comfortable talking to people you don't know and making them comfortable with you. So once I kind of get over that kind of fact, then we kind of really dig in. But every day we talk about the ethics and what could potentially impact the beat and what could impact their coverage.
Okay, from a professional standpoint, do you think Bill will get in? And then do you think Barry Bonds will get in?
Ooh, let me tell you. So the whole thing with Bill, I will tell you, I have been, I'm one of those people. I said I was very surprised. Like, right when it came out, I put a tweet out like, wow, cannot believe Bill Belichick did not get in. But I will tell you, I'm a little bit scared about all that's happening. Like, we saw the response come from the hall and people were questioning the whole system of voting. I think that's gone really, really far. I think immediately people are trying to discredit without even knowing, again, who voted no. I think it's a dangerous walk, I think, that people are walking. So all that to say, rightfully, the outrage, I think, understand that being there. I think it should be there. And honestly, this is sports. This is why we love sports, right? You don't always want people to agree. You want that pushback. If I wanted people just to agree with everything I said, I probably wouldn't work in sports journalism. Check out my mentions if you want to see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, check them out. They're out there.
I don't care about necessarily people agreeing. But like I said, I think at the same time, for people to just completely blast it, like I said, the part of being a journalist is hearing both sides. Yeah. I would love to hear more of that side. I think people are immediately like rushing and, canceling people out and like literally calling people out of their name without even, like I said, giving them a fair shot. It's the same reason why in the legal system, you're innocent until proven guilty. Someone has to prove that you did wrong. And so I think, but I will say, I am glad, though, that we are looking back, because I think a lot of people actually didn't even know how people become a member. So if anything, I like the education piece happening. Yeah. Like, how does one actually become
revelation,
a member, right, of the Pro Football Hall of Fame? So that's a piece I like. The educator in me loves that piece. But I think the outrage piece, like, again, I want it to be justifiable and justified, because like when the hall put the response out talking about people might lose their privileges, I'm like, okay. And it goes back to what you said about the George Floyd thing. I want long-standing, right? If we're really going to talk about change, let's talk about long-standing change. Let's not just be a hot moment because people are outraged and be responding to it. And this goes back with my common PR hat. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at. But he will obviously get in. I don't think there should be anything like specially made for him. He should have been first ballot, in my opinion, right? In my humble opinion, I do think he should have been. But like, to completely like uproar and tear down the system, I don't think it's that serious.
But it's those same people that were loving the system when their people were getting in.
That's the problem. And exactly that, right? When it's people you love. And that's kind of why I said that. I think that statement from the Hall of Fame I thought that it was a big statement, but I think they kind of rushed it in terms, if you just look like you appeal to like when everybody gets mad at things, when the masses, let's say, right, gets mad at things, because not everybody's mad, but when the masses and the loud people get mad at things, I think you start a dangerous trend when that happens, because then what happens again, if this happens again, are you going to put a statement out for everybody that the masses say should get in?
You can't do that. Barry Bonds.
Oh, Barry Bonds. That one's tricky. Obviously there, but so this is the thing. You have to be in the mind of a voter. And is it just on play, or is it on other things, right? Are we going to talk about scandals, or are we going to talk about, trouble? So all that to say, I wish I was a voter for this one. And just so people know, there's different rules for voting, right? Like, so for Heisman, I could not talk about my Heisman vote until after the vote. And so I also want people to realize there's standards that journalists must uphold by, again, if you want to keep your privileges. And so that's the other thing. I think people are so quick to rush and want to attack without realizing sometimes, like, hey, kind of like, these folks are anonymous. Again, there's a reason, like there's rationale. Again, going back to my class, we talk about anonymous sources. Like, there's levels to different things. Ooh, this is a tough one. I'm going to say yes if we're talking about play. Talking about play.
Okay. Okay. So when I went to the Hall of Fame, I've been to the Hall of Fame twice,
Nice. Okay.
and they had a whole section for him.
Nice. Yeah.
First time I went. The second time I went, it was gone, and I was like,
Mm.
but you can't tell the story of baseball without him.
Without Barry. Right.
How
Right.
do you even remove that?
That's like one of those names, right? That I don't out even outside of baseball, right? I would think the average person, because that was the impact.
It was.
That was the impact. And there's
We
some
went
people
to the
who are trying to
retirement. Girl, I cried like a baby. It was ridiculous. And he's still alive.
yes, right. So
So,
like
I don't know. I don't know why they mess why they mess up when I was like this.
it
But
always
listen,
gives a story though to write about in sports journalism or to talk about.
yes. Your story though is still being written.
Mm.
10 years from now, when you look 30, okay,
Please, please
right.
be good to me, Jean.
10 years from now, what do you want people to say about KNN and how she changed sports media and access?
Ooh. I want people to say that she did things her way, but she did it with pride and never forgetting our rep and where she came from.
I love that.
And I'll just want to expand upon that. Like I love that you repped the West Coast earlier and that you showed love, to us and here in the DMV. Like there's something special about being from the DMV area. Like the only reason that I didn't leave, even though I had a chance to live abroad in high school, and then I lived in Charlotte when I worked with NASCAR, but I grew up outside the most powerful city in the world. And that never left my mind. I grew up in a city that was called Chocolate City.
Yep.
I live in a city now where per capita we have the most Black women in leadership positions. The rooms and places that I'm in, not only in sports, it matters. And like I said, to do it in the backdrop of the White House, a house that my ancestors built, it means something. A house, a land of Harriet Tubman and Kunta Kinte. And, I tell people all the time, like in my family, kind of how I'm very passionate about African-American history and culture. So though I grew up in the DMV, I spent my summers in Jackson, Mississippi. My grandmother lived not too far from where Medgar Evers lived and eventually lost his life. And so all of that, reigns true to me till this day. And so I say that to say what I'm doing is not just for me. It's because too many people fought and died and went through too much for me to be here, right? For me to be educated. The quote I end my emails with is from Oprah Winfrey, and it talks about, education is the key to unlocking the world, a passport to freedom. So I'm so big on education. I might not be done my degrees, folks, either. So just know that too. No, I'm teaching now, but notice KNN might be back in the classroom because there's so much.
Leaders and learners. We're still learning over here.
Right. Always a learner. But I think, once you know who you are and you own that, and I realized for me, like being a leader is just in my blood. Like I am that person that was in the group project. Like, look, y'all, what are we going to do? How do we get this together? Like, that's just kind of always been my mentality. I'm very solution oriented. How do we get there? But I think the biggest thing about being a leader is that you have the opportunity to create change. Yep. And that's why for me, I saw the opportunities I didn't get. And that's why one of my proudest moments and joys is being able to launch my internship programs and be partnered with colleges and universities and build a pipeline. I just released the spring 2026 internship class for my podcast network. We have 9 amazing interns from around the country, everywhere from California to right here from, and I love it. I have San Jose State represented. I have American University. I have California Long Beach represented. I have FIU. Like, I love it. And these are young people, some in school now and some recently graduated. They're just looking for, obviously people want 2 things in life: access and opportunity. Access and opportunity. And I just want people to know that's what I'm trying to provide: access and opportunity. And I'm trying to live through it and be that example. But while I'm living through it, I'm trying to make sure that I preach what I teach and making sure I give it back. And so that's the biggest thing for me.
Over the last couple of years, I've been a champion of and doing a lot more educating on media training for athletes. Okay. I think it's essential. I think it's amazing and it needs to start early. Mm-hmm. Part of that obviously is doing interviews and having to write up articles and seeing them mess up their life by not knowing what to say and how to say it. Mm-hmm. I want you to talk to me because you have both the comms and the journalism piece of this. How important is it for young athletes? We ain't going to talk about the older athletes that have money and livelihood to lose.
Yeah.
But young athletes to have media training.
Oh my gosh. So this is what my company Cryption focuses on. So matter of fact, there's any athletes watching this, give us a call, cryption.com. But one of my sayings is use your platform for a purpose fueled by your passions. Athletes, whether you like it or not, you are a role model. That is kind of an innate step that you are going to be part of. You cannot escape that. You are a role model because you're in the public eye. When you're in the public eye, again, whether you want that title or not, you are one. I can't tell you enough how many athletes mess up early, going back to your point, because they don't think they are. And when you don't think you are, that means you say anything, right? Because when you're a role model, you kind of think about what you have to say. Like for me, even before I do a social media post, I think about all my different hats that I'm wearing and all these different lenses that people see me through. And all of these different people who, again, they hire me, folks. I'm a freelancer and a contractor at the end of the day. Like, so how are people that are going to maybe be my future employers view me? And how do my employers now view me? And how do me as a boss woman view myself, right? Because I also have to be able to look at myself at the end of the day. I can't tell you enough. Usually when people are coming to me, it's because something's happened. I can go back to the 𝐻𝐼sman example, right? Pavia,
Yep.
a statement came out, social media went out, and then he had to backtrack. And then always this apology comes out. And by then people don't trust you because they don't know if it's real, right? They think it's a PR tactic or ploy. So all that to say, athlete media training, definitely be proactive. This is why I love when I'm able to get like a student athlete in my class. Hard part is teaching 8 a.m. because a lot of them have practice at that time. So they're not always able to take my class. But at the end of the day, you have to learn. I always say it's kind of like people always ask me about having a journalism degree. At the end of the day, I've never had a problem because you have to know how to speak well and how to write well. I don't care what job it is. Like if you know how to speak well and write well and you work hard, you should have a job. You should be employed or either making your own way, right? Using those two skills. I think honestly, the Minneapolis example is a perfect example. I've been able to use what's been happening in Minneapolis and all that's happening with ICE. And we're seeing athletes ask these questions. I will tell you, some of these athletes, I'm saying, okay, they have a PR team. They like someone help prepare them and
Right.
prep them. And then others, I'm like, yeah, they're gonna be hearing back from someone because what they said. Because again, even though they're playing the sport, and I think Steve Kerr is such a great example. Like Steve Kerr is one that never shies away. Shout out to y'all on the West Coast. Steve Kerr is such, I think, a beacon and pillar. He never shies away. Coach Pop, and prayers up for Coach Pop. Coach Popovich was another one who I think was social. You have to be socially aware.
Yep.
Like I said, my students, you can't only know what's happening in sports. You have to be socially aware. Those players in Minneapolis, they have to go home. They have smartphones. They have TVs. They see what the world is seeing happening right now with ICE and the protesters and the administration's response, right? And how the world is reacting to what's happening. And so at the end of the day, how do you craft a message that's true to you? Because it's very important to be authentic, but at the same time to be conscious and aware of what's happening. And so all that to say, like media training should be a basis. It should be like a minimal right. I know like they do trainings when guys get in the league through the associations, right? NFLPA and BPA and all those different groups. But I think it needs to go a bit deeper because I can go through example and time again when an athlete, unfortunately, either guy or girl has got themselves in trouble with saying something. Again, I think they were just misinformed because I kind of always say there's no such thing as like a dumb question or a dumb answer. I think there's misinformed people and misinformed answers. And that's kind of when the comms and PR training comes in. But again, it's much more better to be proactive. So all that to say, I am a big believer in every athlete at every college and university in the country, like taking some type of comms, PR, media class early. The best way to really get in front of it, you got to learn how they think. The best way to learn how they think is to learn from a person that's doing it. So all that to say, me and you should both be booked and busy having these conversations with athletes sooner than later, because again, they're going, especially now because social media is a thing and it's so easy for anybody to pick up the phone, right? And the athletes and everybody wants a microphone now. It's even more innate that they get this training sooner rather than later, because a well-informed athlete is a socially aware athlete. I think Steph Curry might be one of the best examples that I can think of. I feel like Steph is always like, he's aware, he's on it. He's not only crushing it. Oh, I know not right now, baby, but but the court.
I don't know about the team right now.
I'm like, I just thought about the word. Sorry,
my players are getting crushed.
But still a great athlete and player who gets it, who's aware. I think Zion Williamson is one that also comes to mind on the other side of things, right? We're hearing about what's happened with the Jordan brand and the shoe. We hear, unfortunately, some of these negative headlines, for him in terms of just his personal life, that again, you're a role model, you're an athlete, you're a public figure that gets thrust into the spotlight. And then I think we're kind of seeing like not the response that probably should be happening if you're trying to gain people back, especially as an athlete, right? A big time athlete, right? That's a star. But I'm sure that media training and maybe communications maybe isn't fully there. And I think that's something that could be so helpful. But all that to say, I know the Pelicans PR team, they have been busy. We all saw what just happened in New Orleans. Like, folks are busy, and I get it. But this is when you can bring in outside professionals. And again, athletes have that agency to be able to also bring this onto their teams, especially in the professional ranks. And so please start early, be proactive. We're about to do a whole week of radio row, media row.
Be preventative.
Please, it helps you in the long run, and it'll save you money. And at the end of the day, we all love our coins. So please.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I could talk to you all day, but let me hit the speed round real quick and see what you got, what you're thinking about. Favorite sport to cover and why?
Oh, football. Football was my first introduction, y'all. My dad went to Grambling State University. So Doug Williams and Eddie Robinson were my early inspiration. I grew up in a bedroom, and black and gold were the first introduction. So definitely football, because football outside of my parents was my first love.
I'm Graham fam. I love it.
Oh, look at that. I did not know. Oh my gosh. Now my family's going to watch this back and be all up in it.
Yes. I was there when Eddie was there, and we had, listen, ain't nothing like the Bayou Classic. I'll just say that.
And there's only one side to be on, folks, for the Bayou Classic.
There's only one. I don't care. I don't care. Whatever. Dream interview, living or dead?
Oprah Winfrey. Easy.
Okay.
Icon, role model.
Let me see. One sports media trend you're side-eyeing right now?
People thinking influencers are journalists. That's immediately top of mind. There's a difference. But you can be both, but there's a difference.
We probably could have a whole nother conversation on that, but I'll leave that right there. Press box or locker room? Where do the real stories live?
Locker room. That's about the relationships you build. Class, if you're listening.
And the last thing I want to ask you today is for you to give one piece of advice for the next generation of Black women trying to break into sports media.
You have to love the grind. You have to love the grind. I can't tell you enough. Like, I think a lot of people, they see the glory, but they don't want to know the story or be part of the story. Like, I've paid the dues. I know what it is to be unpaid, working to cover what you love. I used to always joke. I actually used to feel like I used to pay to cover games because I wasn't getting paid, but yet I had to pay to get on the train. I had to pay for transportation, right? But I was there. I was there. So I think that's the biggest thing. And you have to learn all facets of the game. And so, like, for me, not only am I an entrepreneur, not only did I get my master's in sports industry management, I know the business side of sports. Not only am I a Black woman, but I got my degree in African studies. I can really talk about the roots and causes and social issues of sport. I also study public policy, right? So I always say, like, be as well-rounded as you can to give all different sides of something. So like I said, here in DC, I think for me, like, knowing business is so important because we're a business community of entrepreneurs and small business owners. So like, one of the things actually I'm going to later tonight is going to be about how small business owners can be part of the RFK development, what's happening in DC. So I am a business owner, but also as a journalist, I'm talking to what do the people, what do they want as small business owners? How can this really be something that was sold to be for the people, but really be for the people, right? So as well-rounded as you can be is the best thing, but again, pay your dues. Cover high school sports. Don't make excuses. Take your phone if you don't have a camera guy, but make it look good. Like, now there's too many apps and too many things you can buy for your phone and too many devices and trends. I'm actually leaving for Super Bowl early because I'm actually going to go teach a college course with the group out at Super Bowl, and they're going to actually go cover media opening night. And so also just be hungry and looking for opportunities. Like, I wish when I was in school, I had the opportunity to cover Super Bowl when I was in school. If I could go back and do it again, I probably should have been more proactive and been looking for those. I just didn't think, being out here in Maryland, that I even could think about doing Super Bowl. So I would also say, like, just always be actively looking for opportunities because they're there, they exist. And then also I'd say probably lastly, Black women, like find a mentor and get friends in this industry. Like, it's big but small. It's big but small, but like, we want to help. We want to help. Very big and lifting as you climb. So find your people, grow with your people. And I just say love on your people, and also just have joy. I'm such an activist for the Black Girl Joy movement. Like, love this. It's a grind. It's a lot of work. There's sometimes going to be times that you might just be like, oh my gosh, but at the end of the day, you have to love it, and just know, like, recover sport. Like, that's fun. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
It's so,
Have joy.
KNN, Miss Kelsey, I want to thank you for being here. Let the people know how they can get in touch with you, follow your work. If they're looking for a mentor, some guidance, give them all the good information, and it'll be included in the captions also.
No, thank you so much again. So easiest way to find me is my website, KelseyNicoleNelson.com. Also check out my podcast, Listen In With KNN.com. And then my communications company is Krypton, KRYPTIANN.com. And yes, on purpose, because KNN is the brand. So it's in all that I do. And then, yeah, on social media, The Real K Nelson. Absolutely love connecting with folks. LinkedIn and Facebook as well, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. And yeah, if you're interested in fellowship programs or intern programs, those are on my website. Feel free to reach out to me. I have a lot of parents that reach out to me. And if I can't get them now, I'm full for spring. I do have summer and fall open. So again, actively looking. And yeah, I'm always happy to sit down for informational interviews. I will tell you, I'm at my capacity for mentees, and that's because I want to be intentional and intentionally give my time. But I have a network of folks. And so if you need somebody, I will pass you to the best and the brightest, because I have people around me that want to help, want to give back. So yeah, just please feel free to reach out to me. So thanks again so much. You are amazing. This is like the power of just connecting with like-minded women who are just want to give back and do good in the world. I think that's what it comes back to.
And I'm
Thank
about to
you
go
for sharing
and some more Black Girl Joy. Thank you for
Black Girl Joy and magic.
Definitely let's keep in touch. When you come out to
Please.
California, let me know where you're going to be. You don't have to tell everybody, but
I love it. I'm looking forward to meeting you. I'm looking forward to the West Coast. It's cold, y'all. My voice, it's cold. I need the warm. We've been in
you know, it was cold. This is like the coldest Bay Area winter
Are
ever.
we like bad luck or something? Because look, it was. I woke up and they said like it was in the teens. So there was that. So I was expecting to go into some warm sun.
It's been gross. I'm in Redondo Beach now, but all my family up north are like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." So I hope that it heats up over the next couple of days and gets ready for y'all. But you know, I'll definitely see you All-Star Weekend. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you guys.
Bye guys. Make it a great day.
Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What you think about today's episode, and share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores, or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.